Hello, everyone. My name is Rose Simpson. I'm a librarian at the New Haven Free Public Library, and welcome to Co-Create. We are here with our creative agent residence, Nadine Nelson, and today's special guest is Rick Rodgers. Would you two like to introduce yourselves?
Yes. So
you go first, Nadine.
Yes, I go first, and then I usually say like how I know a person, and I allow them to introduce themselves how they would like. So I will say how I know you, and then pass it on to you. So yes, I am Nadine Nelson. So happy to be here. I'm here with Rick Rodgers, who is a cookbook author and food professional, and one of my favorite cooking personalities. He showed a lot of personality at the beginning of the show. So it's going to be a great evening of talking. Today, I'm going to be working on my cards on my iPad. And maybe if Rick wants to pick a number between 1 and 50, I will read his herb and spice card that I have made. So I don't know if you want to do that. It's up to you. If you don't, that's up to you also. So how do I know Rick? So Rick is a cookbook author, and I love cookbooks. And growing up, I would watch as many people on PBS and on television, and also get as many cookbooks as I could. So Rick has written over 100 cookbooks, and he will share that with you. And so as a lover of cookbooks, he's been one of those people that has been a large part of my cookbook collection. And so I'll say how I know him. I don't know if he remembers maybe meeting me at his house in Maplewood. He was having an estate sale, and I got to go on the last day. So I did not get to get any cookbooks or items, but I did get to have a feel of his kitchen and see like maybe where he might have been creating some of his wonderful cookbooks. So I know him also being a member of the International Association of Culinary Professionals, and being colleagues. And he has so much wisdom and really great information to share. I said that, I hope he can share some spicy stories, maybe have a little messy dish, but that really is up to him. And so I will allow him to introduce himself, and then we will see where our conversation takes us.
Yeah, Nadine, it was so funny because when I saw your name on the visitors list at the estate sale, I guess it was a house sale because I was still alive. But I was downsizing, and I was moving to Delaware, and I inherited some property in Delaware, and it just seemed like a good thing to do, because everybody talks about how low taxes are in Delaware. But there are a bunch of other things that I did not like about Delaware. So I was only there for 2 years, and now I'm back. But the house sale, I decided that I wasn't going to move with every single pot and pan that I had. And Nadine can testify that I had a lot of pots and pans. And I kind of had to go through and do what you always hate to do. And I made a rule, like if I haven't cooked in this pan for over a year, it's out of here. Now, I mean, that seemed to me like a good idea to me, but it's like now every time I go to reach for a certain pan, like especially if I'm baking something, I had a bunch of Kugelhof pans. So Kugelhof is like the original bundt pan. It's got those, it looks
kind
like
of fluted sides.
Pardon me?
Like kind of fluted sides?
Fluted sides, right. But it's supposed to look like a Turkish head dress, I know it doesn't, but that's what it's supposed to look like. And so the Kugelhof, I got rid of like 10 Kugelhof molds. And now every time I want to make a Kugelhof, I'm like going, darn it, I gave the wrong one away. So anyway, yeah, so it's funny. So that's how Nadine and I know each other. But actually recently, she and I met in a classroom because if you're a creative person like Nadine and I both are, you have to keep educating yourself. You know, you can't just say, okay, I've learned enough. I'm done. I can. Now, I will say that after 100 cookbooks, I do have that feeling for myself. That like I have written everything I care to write about food, and I got an extra few years out of my career because I started doing collaborations with other people. I started doing celebrity cookbooks, and we'll talk about that. So, so at any rate, so Nadine and I have reconnected in the last couple of months in the classroom, which is, you know, I think is kind of unusual actually, because, you know, Nadine and I are both only, you know, like in our mid 30s, and but you know, we're still going to school. So anyway, that's how we reconnected.
Well, don't you think that good teachers need to be good students?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
so you can always learn something.
well, yeah, but what you said about being a good student, recently I was in an online cooking class, and I was just with other teachers, other cooking teachers. I just was amazed at how impolite they were. I'm like, you know, it's like, haven't you learned anything about when you're trying to teach a class and people ask questions? Like, there's no such thing as a dumb question, but you know, maybe if you just shut up and let the person cook what they wanted to cook, they would answer your question without you interrupting them. There, I said it. So yeah, you have to learn how to be a good teacher. But the other thing is learning different techniques and skills. And I use YouTube for that a lot. Now, I'm a cookbook guy. I write cookbooks. And if you're a home cook, I bet you love to hold a book in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
But I still use YouTube because it's more immediate. You know, and you know, there's certain things that I learned from people that I know they just made this video last week. You know, so I have to keep up with what people are doing. I'll give you an example of what I mean is that, okay, you have a plain croissant and the dough is wrapped up and it's brown and you can see how it is rolled, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a new technique that I'm seeing more and more bakeries do, which is that they're spreading, excuse me, dried fruit like raspberries or blueberry powder on top of the dough before it's rolled up. And so now it's got this laminated swirl in the middle of it.
Ooh,
It looks
that sounds
way
tasty.
cool. And it tastes pretty good too, excuse me. I drank my water so I would clear my throat and it made it worse.
Uh-huh.
It's life. So so now I'm experimenting at home about how to do that in my own baking.
Mm-hmm.
So
Rick, did you want me to read your card?
oh, 21.
Okay. It's the first time I'm using my iPad for this particular program.
It says I'm very calm and work well under pressure and never let technological things ever upset me.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it said? Nadine is going, heck no. It does not say that.
Like, I'm just
Not
trying to
only
see
does
what,
it not say
I'm
that.
trying to see what numbers on the iPad. It's not showing. It's like each different thing on each different device.
You could just make it up. How would I know?
I know, but I don't want to do that because it it is the energy of what it is. So I want to see what energy you brought for real. Um, all right. So why don't I ask you a question while I'm looking? You said
No, you're looking.
21.
Okay.
Okay, while you're looking. And then, so I usually ask people what their, creative journey or their art journey
Oh,
has been. So why don't I, for some people might not be familiar with your background, why don't you
yeah.
give an abbreviated version and then we can, dip into some spicy areas,
All right. So actually, I've always been a very creative person. I started out as an actor. When I was a little boy, I started taking dancing lessons when I was like 5 and 6 years old. And so I was always at some dance recital or some singing recital or something. And then I joined like a children's theater at the local college, and I just kept going along that route of creativity, but as a performer. And somewhere along the line, well, that's not really, that line isn't hard to find. My family is from a little tiny country called Liechtenstein. And my great aunts, when they came to America, my family ended up in Oakland, California. And the only jobs that they could get were in kitchens. So they reminded me that they were too poor to have things like flour and butter and eggs all the time. I mean, they had what was on, they didn't live on a farm, they were just poor. That was another thing I was corrected on. I remember once I'm like, going, oh, well, you got eggs and milk and butter from the farm. They go, no, we were just poor. We didn't live on a farm. Snap out of it. So um, because my fantasy of what life was like in the old country from them with them was entirely different from what the reality was. So when they came to America, the only jobs they could get was in kitchens, and that's where they really learned how to bake. Because this is going to be something we're going to talk about a little later. When I'm going to make this Austrian pancake called Kaiserschmarrn, and there is a lot of history and a lot to reveal about the way how people ate and eat still now in Austria. And when I make this, there's going to be a lot more to than meets the eye of just a stovetop pancake. Okay, so the restaurant business and the food business fascinated me when I was a teenager. So when I was very young, I mean, even then I was like, 15 or 16. I couldn't even ring up the wine at the register because I was so young. I always had to call the boss to come over and ring up the wine. Is that somebody opened up a gourmet delicatessen in my hometown, and it was really a good delicatessen. It had a lot of good Italian and German sausages and excellent gourmet cheese, whatever what you could get at the time. Let's see, I'm only 35, so this was 1990. So anyway, so this was, but this was way before the gourmetization of San Francisco. And even though San Francisco always had, in the Bay Area, I grew up in the suburbs, but there still was a farm where you could go and pick your own asparagus and pick your own strawberries across the street from my high school. So I grew up with this combination of suburbia and farm to table. I have to roll my eyes sometimes when I hear farm to table because that is nothing new to somebody who grew up near an agricultural region like I did. So I started working in the restaurant business when I was 16 years old, and that was the end of it. You know, I was 17 years old and I could tell you the difference between Brie and a Camembert, you know, and the difference between Cabernet and Syrah. And because it was my job. I went to college, I continued to work in the restaurant business. And like, you know, most of us do when we're in college, we fall in love with the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
And because, you know, you always get one trial heavy relationship, you know, so I had mine very early on. I felt like I met the love of my life my first day of college, and it kind of went downhill from there. But at any rate, I ended up in New York following this boyfriend of mine, and I ended up in New York, and I thought I was going to be an actor. I was so sellable in the restaurant business that I never went to an audition. Here I'd been training to be an actor for 15, 20 years. But when I got to New York, I had people throwing money at me, literally, as a waiter and as a restaurant manager. I was like, well, this is ridiculous. I have a career in the restaurant business. Why am I leaving a solid career in order to have a shot in the dark in show business? That was probably the last sensible thing I ever did in my life. But anyway, I just said, okay, I'm gonna, you know, continue with food. So I'm in New York City, and most of you who are watching this are from the tri-state area. So you know what New York City is. I mean, you have to swim with the sharks pretty fast. And immediately I started dealing with celebrities because I was working at a restaurant called Teachers, which is next door to Zabar's on Broadway and 81st Street. I should say was, it's long disappeared. I worked there for like 10 years and I did everything that you can do in a restaurant. And in the meantime, I'm waiting on every Broadway star and every movie person that came through New York. And it was great. And I ended up as the personal chef for Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira, who most people will probably remember Jerry from his work on TV, playing everybody's dad and grandpa on like Seinfeld and The King of Queens TV shows. But, you know, when I was growing up, Stiller and Mira were the ultimate nightclub comedy act. And they were just wonderful, wonderful people and were very, very helpful to me over the years. So they introduced me to more celebrities and I started doing catering. So at this point, I'm probably
Were you doing personal You're doing your own personal catering?
I'm doing catering for Jerry and Ann's buddies, like Mike Nichols and I'm trying to think, but it really doesn't matter. Believe me, it was crazy. So, and I got these jobs because I was so young and I was so innocent. And I just was like, okay, I'll do it. And so one day I'm at a party where somebody left the window open and pushed the hostess's dog out the window. Now, it was only on the first floor. The dog fell into the dumpster. It was not a big tragedy. But of course, we all treated it like it was a big tragedy. And things got worse and worse and worse because the hostess got drunker and drunker. And, you know, I'm trying to hold the party together. And I'm like going, this is not my job to hold this party together. And so I go and after the party is over, the guest of honor comes up to me, a woman, this very elegant woman, all decked out in Chanel. You know, baby, when you see Chanel, you know you're in for something. You know that there's going to be a story involved. when somebody walks into the kitchen in Chanel. So I'm like, nice to meet you. And she says, oh mon Dieu, you are just so wonderful tonight. And my name is André Rancher Bonaparte. We, as in Bonaparte. And I work for the French government in New York. And we are always looking for the caterer. And I was wondering what you were doing on Friday night. And I'm like thinking, wow, you know, I'm getting asked out on a date by this rich French woman up for Friday night. And I'm like, going, nothing. What, you know, where are we going? And she goes, man, I'm giving a party for Yves Saint Laurent at the consulate, and I'm wondering if you can cater it. I mean, I'm not going to say no. Mm-hmm. I should have said no, but I'm not going to say no. Because I'm thinking in my head, wow, $10 a person, I'm going to make $5,000. So okay. those were the prices back then. So I did the party, and it turned out to be 500 people. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't even know how we got the hors d'oeuvres out the door, but we did. And so then I started a relationship I had with the French government for like 5 years. And that was a real feather in my cap because I was an American cooking French at the French consulate, which was a big deal. And now I'm like maybe 28. I'm really ancient now. I really got all this experience under my belt. So the next thing that happened in this creative journey was I'm doing a party at the French government, and it's for a new flavor of Grand Marnier. So all of the food magazines, Gourmet, Food and Wine, Family Circle, Good Housekeeping, you know, just think of any food magazine in the early 80s. All the editors were at the party. And so they all came into the kitchen one by one and said, we wanted to see who the caterer was because the food is really good. I'm like, oh, wow, thanks. So I ended up getting magazine contracts from all of these people. They all called me the next day and said, you know, how would you like to work for our magazine, write an article? No, no, I refuse. So that's how that started. And, but the real story goes like this. You can't really be a food writer in New York at a certain level where you're being published a lot without having somebody protect you, and that's your agent. Otherwise, as one of my editors once took me out to lunch, she said, this is the last time you and I are going to be going out to lunch as friends. From here on in, we are going to be business colleagues and adversaries because it's my job to make money for the publisher. And the way how I make money for the publisher is to be sure that I don't pay you too much money. So your agent is going to keep me in line and remind me how great you are, because I'm all about dollars and cents, and you're all about making a living. So we have to meet halfway. I'm at the gym. This is probably the last time anybody saw me in a leotard. But I remember aerobics classes, those of you. So we're in an aerobics class. This woman comes up to me and she says, you know, this is silly. We take this aerobics class with each other every day and we don't know anything about each other. And I said, well, you're right. We have to fix that. And she goes, well, my name is Harriet Bell and I'm a cookbook editor. And I said, your name is familiar. She goes, what's your name? I go, Rick Rodgers. And she goes, Rick Rodgers, you're friends with my client, my author, Susan Weiler. And you contributed a bunch of recipes to her latest cookbook. I'm like, yes. She goes, I'm the editor on the cookbook and I've been looking for you because you have got to write your own cookbook. I'm going, get out of here. She goes, no, I'm telling you, your recipes are really good. And I could tell the way how you wrote them that you knew what you were doing. I really have a lot of work for you. So I'm like, oh, okay. So that's how I got into the cookbook business, because I was standing next to somebody in a leotard at a gym on West 20th Street. So, I mean, I had been building up to that because of my experience. And you know what, I always cooking, because when you're a caterer, you have to learn how to cook everything. You know, if somebody says to you, you know, it's my husband's birthday and I know he really wants his favorite thing, whatever that favorite thing is. And he loves chocolate cake and it's got to have white frosting. You're like, you have to learn how to make a good chocolate cake with white frosting. And so my specialty when I was in the cookbook business is that I had no specialty. So that's all different now because of social media, and everybody's an expert. And if you start a blog, you're automatically an expert. And so now I think that people are niching down. You know, you have to find what you're really good at that makes you unique. So that's
What would you see? What
my
would you say
journey.
your niche is, and what would you say from yourself, and then would you say like your audience would say your niche is?
Well, what I'm doing now is I'm concentrating on the desserts of my heritage, which is Vienna, or the Austro-Hungarian Empire, specifically, because my family lived about 700 miles from Vienna. And at that point in history, it may as well have been 7 million miles, right? But when they learned how to bake, they learned how to bake the classic Austro-Hungarian desserts. And about 20 years ago, I wrote a book called Coffee House, spelled the German way, Kaffeehaus. And so that's really my specialty now. And I'm starting an online cooking school. And so if you go to Facebook and friend Rick Rodgers, be sure to spell my name Rodgers, and friend me, I can get you the information. You can try to see in a couple of days, coffeeandhouse.org, not .com, .org. Coffeeandcake.org will be up and running. So you can take a virtual cooking class with me on these really, really incredible desserts. Because when we think about desserts, most of us think about Italian desserts and French desserts. And there's a whole world of desserts out there. And so I really want to teach people something new about their dessert making skills. And so that's what I'm doing. But I would say that the people that read my books think that I am all about comfort food. I've done a lot of books about comfort food. I did a book on Thanksgiving, the ultimate comfort food holiday. I did, and I also did a book on comfort food for Williams Sonoma. Williams Sonoma is one of my best customers. I've done 12 books for Williams Sonoma over the years. So that's kept me out of trouble. So,
how do you feel about going online, as opposed to you're one of the original cookbook teachers and cooking teachers who's traveled all around the country
Right.
and work at different cooking schools. So what do you feel is the future of like in-person cooking classes, and how do you feel
I
about
I
being
like to
online?
hope that they're here to stay, because now you're not going to have to travel to take a class from somebody who's truly an expert in the field that you want to learn about. And another thing that I found was that some of the cooking online cooking classes were really expensive because they were a big series with a huge star like Thomas Keller and or Alice Waters. And it's good to learn from them, but I don't I'm just glad that I have the option to take a bunch of different smaller classes from other people where it's not going to cost me $200.
Yes.
So I think that that is really going to make a difference.
I think it's really cool, like a person like Kathy Hester, who does like Instapot things. And
Mhm.
I bought one of her classes to learn about making cheeses with she has one like making white bean ricotta and some other things. And just to add to my repertoire, because I teach a lot of plant-based stuff and I know how to make a lot of cheeses with nuts and stuff like that. But she like takes it to another level. Um, and um, you know, I can't go wherever she is. So it's like great that I can pay
Right,
$35 and learn how to make these cheeses and do it with another person if I want to, but get that level of detail at a cost that's like really fair and accessible. I like that.
exactly. And um, yeah, but you know, it's just the difference between you and me and what we teach is that you're doing plant-based and teaching people about the blue zone, and you're doing some, you know, very much in the moment. And I'm teaching things from the past and about old traditions. You're doing new traditions.
Well, they're
But
actually, like you said, though, about sustainability and, you know, like about my background, I grew up Seventh-day Adventist. These are actually old traditions. It's like repackaged as new, but,
oh,
you
right,
know,
I'm talking about nut-based cheeses.
oh, oh, yeah. But you know what? I don't know how to do that. But the people that, you know, I grew up with, they know how to, they were making gluten and nut-based cheeses and nut meats and stuff like that. I didn't really learn that because my mom wasn't Seventh-day Adventist. So like, although I went to church and I had that stuff and I was around that stuff, you know, I learned how to make vegetables really well. Um, that's the aspect that I really liked. But then, you know, knowing that how many people like to eat those type of things, and
Yeah,
at least it's not processed, that's why I'm trying to, you know, learn how to make it now.
right.
So
But even so, we're both cooking teachers, but we're teaching entirely different things. We're using entirely different skill sets because when you're online, you're marketing to the entire world. You're not just marketing to whoever is going to come see you at the local school.
right.
Now, I miss those local schools. You know, one of my favorite places was in Connecticut. It's nowhere near um, New Haven,
Where
but
was it?
it was in Litchfield Hills in New Milford. And it was a place that was in business for 30, 35 years called the Silo.
Yes, yes.
Oh my God, what a great place. And it was run by the band leader, Skitch Henderson, and his wife. And it was just a really special place to teach and all of that. Well, I'm thinking that I might be a little hungry and have to make something for dinner. So, so let me get started here and make that thing that I said that I
Okay.
wanted to teach you all how to make. Now, I'm not going to worry about giving you the recipe because the ingredients are only a few of them. and you can either write down what we're talking about or just Google it. And, you can also get in touch with me directly at rick@rickrodgers.com. Just remember that I have the D in my name, as in Rodgers and Hammerstein. And that's a story, but I won't go. All right, I'll tell you the story later. Don't let me forget about me and Richard Rodgers, who I am not named after, just a coincidence. But he did loom large in my life. So anyway, so let me get started here. And one of the first things I want to do is let me move my camera a little bit, or quite a bit. Let's see what I got here.
Yep.
There we go.
Yep, I can see it, that area clearly.
Okay, so one thing I want to do, I don't know why I get crazy about things, because I mean, I have cooked everything in the world, every way in the world, except maybe on a trapeze. So, there's always a way to make it work. But one of the things I want to show, I need to separate 4 eggs. And I want to show you the way how most people separate eggs is they crack the egg in half, right? And then they go back and forth. And, that works, but you also run the risk of cracking the yolk on the sharp eggshell. So I find it much better, especially when I'm doing a lot of eggs, is to just put it in my hand and let the whites go through my fingers. And I have much more control over the yolk that way. If you work in a restaurant, well, I worked in a restaurant, and I had to do, can't even think of how many it was, because it was cases of I'm trying to think, 144 eggs in a case, 5 cases. I mean, I would do like 600 eggs every morning.
Oh, wow.
Crack them like this. So I learned the fast way how to do it. So I have some egg whites, and whenever you do work with egg whites, you want to be sure that the bowl is absolutely clean. And a glass bowl is okay, but a stainless steel bowl is better because it's easier to clean. And I have my 4 egg yolks over here. And I'm going to need just happen to have some melted butter ready here. This is 2 tablespoons of melted butter. This is 1 cup of regular old flour. This is 3 tablespoons of sugar. This is 2 tablespoons of butter that we're going to be cooking the pancake in, and 1 cup of milk. So far, this looks like an American pancake, right? I mean, has more eggs than an American pancake, but even so, it has the same ingredients as an American pancake. And I've soaked some golden raisins. You can use dark raisins, and I soaked them in a little bit of rum. Now, if you're going to be making this for in the morning, you may not want to soak these in rum, or you may want to soak them in rum, and you may want to soak them in a Bloody Mary, but you can use any kind of fruit juice or just plain water. But what I'm doing here is I'm getting rid of the excess liquid and draining the raisins. So I have an electric mixer here ready to go. So I'm going to start with the whites. I have a really great mixer, as you can see.
Sounds like your computer has some kind of like noise reduction thing, because you sound a bit like you're underwater when the mixer is on.
Okay. So I don't work for Cuisinart, but that is one heck of a mixer that can whip those whites up that fast.
Mhm.
Can you hear me with the mixer on?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Pretty well enough?
Yep.
So here's my 4 egg yolks and my 3 tablespoons of sugar. You want to beat these really well. Okay. These are turning a pale yellow, and they're really thickening up. And you're going to see them increase in volume too. So you really want to do this for a minute or two to get them to this thick and yellow state.
And it looks like lemon pudding.
You know, I normally would go a little bit more, but don't tell anybody. So now, let me grab I'm going to turn on my hot plate and get a nonstick pan heated up. Okay,
How old is that hot plate?
Pardon me?
How old is that hot plate?
I'm busted.
Well, we were just talking about today that, you know, like, look how old it is, but it works really well. And then the new ones that how you know, like you probably have to replace it every year, you know?
You got it. It's like I have to polish this up one of these days, but you know, for the time being, I mean, this has been more catering jobs with me, and you're right. The reason why I use it because it works, and people are like saying, "Oh, I got this fancy schmancy induction burner for $99 and it works great." I'm going, it doesn't work great for me because, like this pan. This one probably works. This is an all clad. You can see on the bottom, it's metal. So the induction will probably work with this. But I also have some pans that are coated on the bottom, which means that it stops the induction. And it's like, I'm not going to go out and buy a new, you know. So while that's heating up, let's get back to the batter. This is really an easy thing to make. And the story I want to tell you about this is actually something that people would eat for dinner, not so much for breakfast, because there's an entire category of cooking in Austrian cooking called Mehlspeisen. And what Mehlspeisen is, it means a flour meal, a meal based on flour, because, you know, the cakes are not always made with flour. That's one of the definitions of what a tort is that a tort is made from breadcrumbs and ground nuts, not especially flour. The rich people would cook with flour, but not so much regular people. So if you were just regular people, you would make Kaiserschmarrn for dinner, and then maybe you would have a little sausage with it. But you always serve this with fruit. And the number one thing that people make with this is called roasted plums, Schweizenrosen. But the thing with the roasted plums is that they're not roasted. They're made into a stew on top of the plums are made into a stew on top of the stove. Now, Kaiserschmarrn means the Kaiser's nothing. There's a word that is the abbreviation is BS. You know, so it's like just means the Kaiser's fancy. You know, and And so the story is that the Kaiser was coming to visit somebody and they had nothing to serve him. And so they made him Kaiser Schmarrn. They made him this pancake because they knew it was going to be good, that he would like it. And then over the course of the years, it became his favorite dish. And so then it acquired the name Kaiser Schmarrn. Well, people are kind of missing the thing that Kaiser is also close to Kaiser, meaning cheese. So there probably was cheese in this years ago. And I have like put some ricotta in this, and it's fantastic. Ricotta or farmer's cheese is what they would use in Austria. Okay, so let me get back to a meeting with so on low speed, I just want to check something on my recipe because I normally make this while I'm asleep. Here's my cup of milk. Two tablespoons of melted butter and a little vanilla. By little vanilla, I mean, like a half a teaspoon or so. You really don't want this to taste like a cake. And now I'm going to put in that 1 cup of flour. So there's the basic batter, and there's a little something, in Europe, they don't put too much salt in their baked goods, but I do want a pinch of salt in here because this has flour as a main dish. I mean, as a base. So I'm going to put some of the whites. I'm really stirring them in so you can see. Whoops, no, you can't. I'm sorry. There we go. I put the whites in there to lighten the mixture. And then now let's put in the rest of the, when you teach cooking, all you do is put things away. You have a little fun too, but most part I put things away all the time. So what I'm doing here is I really want to fold this. I don't want the whites to deflate, but I want to be sure that they're being incorporated. So folding means that you go all the way down to the bottom of the bowl and you flip your spatula over, and then eventually you're going to have the whites incorporated. But you can see the whites are incorporated, but look how fluffy and beautiful this batter is. He said modestly. And then another thing you want to get used to when you're teaching cooking is you keep stacking your bowls. And then here is the soaked raisins that you really do not need. I'm moving this over to, yeah, okay, that's pretty good. I need only half of this butter because I'm going to churn this baby over. So I'm going to need some extra butter in here. Okay, so there's half of my butter, like a tablespoon of butter. Nadine, I got to tell you, this kitchen is pretty well set up for classes.
It is.
I got everything pretty much at my fingertips. Every now and then I have to go down to the basement because I forgot my Kugelhof pan, but for the most part, it's okay.
So you moved back to New Jersey, correct?
Yes. And first thing I did was put in a new kitchen. Okay.
Are you in Maplewood?
No, I'm in West Orange.
Okay.
A couple of towns over.
No, yeah, it's really cute. They have a cute downtown.
Yeah. So let me try to figure out what the heat is on this baby. Okay, so This makes two. This makes two big pancakes. So what you do is you put half of the batter in, and we're going to let it cook. And so the other thing that's funny about the Kaiserschmarrn story is that, like most emperors, the emperor had a girlfriend, but the problem was that the girlfriend in question, you know, they really were just good friends, because nobody was going to mess with the empress. And also, this woman was religious and, you know, wasn't, you know, she was a star at the Royal Theater. And her name was Katharina Schmidt. No, Katharina. Oh, it really doesn't make any difference to you guys, so let's just call it Katharina Schmidt. And besides, there's not a test later, so I don't have to get it right. And anyway, so, you know, she got to the point where they had houses next to each other in the resort town called Bad Ischl. And so she would like pretty much make Kaiserschmarrn and go, hey, Franz Josef, come on over for pancakes. And then he would go trekking across the garden to go over there. So this is like the kind of story that everybody knows.
So why do you like the East Coast, or why, you know, growing up in the West Coast?
Yeah.
It's always interesting. It's always
I
interesting.
just have so many business opportunities here. I just
Okay.
stay. You know, I mean, I get to go to California a lot. Back in the day, I was going a lot to teach cooking classes. So, okay, now this is where the fun with the Kaiserschmarrn comes in, because Kaiserschmarrn doesn't care if you mess it up. It does not have to be perfect. It wants you to mess it up. So what you do is you look, okay, so I can see that this is pretty good because it's set. And I bet you it's browned on the bottom. I don't know, I think it may need a little bit more. Yeah, this needs a little bit more time because you want it to be browned on the bottom. So I'm going to turn the heat up on this guy. Now you could be fancy and flip this like not like a pizza. What do you do where you flip it up? Oh, like a pancake. You could do that, but it's not worth it. So, so when I went to Vienna and Budapest and Prague and was researching my book, Coffee House, I cooked in all of these famous cafes and coffee houses. And I mean, it was just fascinating because every cake has a story. You know, a lot of the cakes are named after people, they're named after battles, they're named after cities, they're named after royalty. It's really interesting. And people take their desserts very, very seriously. Because again, they're like meals. Like another thing that's popular for dinner is cheesecake. You know, we would never think of cheesecake as something for dinner, but if you're poor and you live on a farm and all you have is cheese and milk and eggs, you put some breadcrumbs on the bottom so the cake doesn't stick, and then you have cheesecake and everybody has cheesecake for dinner. I don't know, sounds pretty good to me. I thought I would probably go with chocolate cake. Although one time I did go to a restaurant, it was an Amish restaurant in Mount Joy, Pennsylvania. I think it was Mount Joy, but anyway, it was in Amish country. And so I ordered my dinner. The waitress comes by with a little piece of chocolate cake, puts it down in front of me. And I go, you must be confused. I didn't order dessert. I haven't had my dinner yet. She goes, no, My mom makes the chocolate cake here, and it's fantastic. And every time we serve so much food that when I ask people if they want dessert, they say, no, I'm full. And I'm sick of it. So now I bring everybody free dessert at the beginning of the meal so they taste my mother's cooking. And after you taste this cake, you're going to save room and order some for dessert. Now that was a good sales pitch.
Was it good chocolate cake?
It was good chocolate cake too. Okay, so now this is feeling like this is, you can see how set this is.
Mhm.
Let's give it a try. So you just take your wooden spoon and with your nonstick pan, you don't want to use anything that's going to scratch it up. Do as I say, not as I do, because I just saw a nice scratch on this pan. And I'm sure it's totally my fault. And then now you just flip it over.
So cut it into smaller pieces so it's easier to flip instead of flipping the whole thing.
That's right. Now we're going to let this cook on the other side for a minute or two. Now this side's not going to take as long. And, you know, you're always adjusting when you cook with an electric hot plate like this, you know, you're always adjusting for the heat because it's different for you from the other one, from the regular stove. And, oh, the smells so good. Now, this has sugar in it. So I already suggested that if you wanted to have something else to stretch the meal, you could do some sausages or some fruit salad or something like that to go with it. I love making this for the two of us for breakfast on a weekend, and it's also much easier to deal with. I'm touching these because I want to feel them and see if they're squishy or if they're bouncing back or they're just almost done. Anyway, the thing is that if I were making pancakes, I'd be fussing with the individual pancake, I'd be fussing a lot more.
I like that, how it's set and it was just easy.
Oh yeah, but like I'm saying is that it doesn't have to be perfect. When I make pancakes and I'm making those perfect pools of batter, and I don't know, it's just not. And I've made plenty of pancakes in my career, and it's still frustrating. Okay, so so you just go throw this. Oh, wait a second, I'm not doing the finishing touch. You really mess it up at this point. You take your knife, not your knife, your wooden spatula, and you cut it up into bite-sized pieces. This is really, if you see a picture of this in a cookbook, you're like going, that's like weird looking scrambled eggs.
So is there any particular reason why you break it up in the pan instead of on the plate?
It's just traditional.
Okay.
You know, really, there really is no reason. I would make another one, but then I would have to share it. So, and then over here, where you can't see my stove behind me, but believe me, there's a stove there. I made a little bit of fruit sauce. I had some blueberries in the refrigerator. And so I just took like a cup of blueberries, put a little bit of lemon juice in it, and a couple of tablespoons of sugar, and cooked it until it got syrupy. The juices of the berries came off and it got syrupy. It took like maybe 5 minutes. So let me.
Looks great.
It's really good. It's probably really hot too.
I'm gonna make that with my daughter. I think that she'll like that.
Well, there's not many kids that don't like pancakes.
I know, and that you can't really mess up on them. I like that aspect, and also whipping the whites. I always like to have kids like whip whites or whipped cream. That's fun.
I happen to have my fancy schmancy
Powdered sugar.
powdered sugar shaker. But, it is what it is, baby, It's not supposed to be fancy, as I've now said for 5 times. But, this really is supposed to feed 4 people. The 2 pancakes are supposed to feed like half a pancake per person. Not in this house. We just.
There's a question in the chat.
The question is, I happen to see it. If the pancake recipe is available online. What I said was, if you want my recipe, you can get in touch with me at rick@rickrodgers.com. And my name is spelled Rodgers. And I'll get it to you. I don't think it's living. I don't know if you were to Google Rick Rodgers Kaiser Schmarrn, just email me and I'll get you the darn recipe because it's too much trouble to spell it. Unless you were a German major in college.
And they can also just watch it on the replay here too. Because
there's just a few ingredients.
Right, exactly. And you went over them very well and detailed and slowly. And they'll probably just want to
tell
see
you the story with my mouth full.
Okay.
About Richard Rodgers. Excuse me.
The person said that they have Thanksgiving 101 cookbook and they can watch the replay. You can also ask questions too.
And if you're watching on Zoom, the replay will be on the library's Facebook page. So that is NHFPL. If you check our videos after the stream is over, you can check the video there anytime.
Yeah, but I'm also happy to get you. I want you to watch the interview. That'd be great, but I'll get you the recipe. Don't worry.
Yeah, they have your email.
Yeah. So I'm a little boy and I'm stage struck, and a production of The Sound of Music is coming through our town where there was a theater, and they're looking for kids to play the Von Trapp children. So I, of course, see this as my entree into Broadway stardom. And I wanted to go audition. And my family behaved the way that I would with my kids when they're 11 years old and said, do you really understand what this means? We'd have to take you out of school for 2 weeks so you can rehearse. And then we'd have to, probably rehearsals maybe at night. And we're working all day. And how are we going to, and this was way before soccer. Soccer teams where you drive 3 hours so your kid can play soccer for an hour and a half. Anyway, so I didn't get to go to the audition. And I was as mad as a tween can be, that everybody hates me, I'm ugly, my parents are stupid, they're ruining my life. You know, just all that stuff that you feel when your hormones are telling you all of this, you know, all of this stuff, which nobody ever explains to you, I may add, that you have to find out 30 years later. When, you know, you see the kids around you behaving the same way, you realize, you know, it wasn't so unusual. So anyway, you know, so I practically went on a hunger strike and, you know, and did everything that a tween can do to upset his mother and father and make them feel guilty. But somehow I don't remember them feeling guilty. But what I did was I wrote a letter to Richard Rodgers, the composer, and complained about my mother and father. And he wrote me back. Now, why did he write me back? Because my cousin was a chorus girl on Broadway in the 40s and 50s and was like literally the queen of the chorus girls. She was famous as being like the best chorus girl in the business. And so she was in South Pacific. She was in Call Me Madam. She was in a show called Miss Liberty. She was in a show called Song of Norway. All of these shows mean nothing to most theater fans now, but they were enormous hits in their day. So I was able to say, you know, I'm sure you don't remember Trudy Deleuze, but I'm her cousin and my parents are ruining my life by not letting me try out for the Sound of Music. So I actually get a letter in the mail from Richard Rodgers, and my mother is like, you know, whatever the equivalent of WTF was in 1964.
How dare you?
Well, I wrote Richard Rodgers and I complained that you were mean to me and you wouldn't let me audition. And so I gotta say, my mother and father were like, whoa, this kid's got something going on if he can sit down and write a letter to Richard Rodgers. And it was that kind of behavior that continued for all the years in my career. Because, you know, I wrote a lot of celebrity cookbooks with a lot of stars. And it's just that because I came from a family where we had show business people in the family, I just was never intimidated by their behavior.
You want to disclose any stories without any names?
No, but I think it's kind of interesting to see. I'm going to go through the process of how somebody writes a celebrity cookbook, because, you know, like there are celebrity cookbooks and there are celebrity cookbooks. I mean, there are some that are better than others, is what I'm trying to say. And it helps if the person, I have to have another bite of it. It's okay.
Oh yeah, eat.
I want you guys to make this. This is really good. All right, so I'm trying to think what the first celebrity cookbook I was really. Well, what would happen? There's many interesting layers to this. One is that I worked for a famous cookbook editor, and her name was Maria Guarnaschelli. And Maria was famous because she was very highfalutin, and she only did cookbooks that were of a certain quality. And she was really good at finding new talent and getting them to write their first cookbook. Like Rick Bayless is one of those people that she found in Chicago, Mexican restaurant. wrote his cookbook, and then it went off from there. Rose Levy Berenbaum is another person who Maria said, everybody else, like when Rose went around and said, I want to do a book called The Cake Bible, nobody wanted to do the book because it was too enormous. But Maria was like, we'll do it. We'll figure it out. But the secret to Maria's success is that she had 2 clients that were very lowbrow, and they raked in the money. That was 2 guys. One was called the Frugal Gourmet, and the other one was called Mr. Food. And these guys were superstars in the 80s. The Frugal Gourmet had, the Frugal Gourmet was in a and had a very unhappy end.
What'd you say? I didn't hear what you said about the Frugal Gourmet.
Because
Yeah,
a
your
bunch
audio
of
froze for a sec.
young men who he had worked with at a restaurant in Washington got together and sued the pants off of him and won. So, but at the time, sexual harassment didn't hardly exist in any way, shape, or form, was not on anybody's radar screen. And so he just was making money for the company with his TV show and his cookbooks. So
he was one of the people that I watched because he was on PBS and all of that.
exactly. So,
And at that time, just so people don't understand, because, we're a little, even though we're 35, a little,
right.
that at that time, like Natalie Dupree, I think I talked a couple weeks ago about like Burt Wolfe, Jacques Pepin, Julia Childs, Yankee Cook. There was only, 6 people that you could watch at any given time, and that was a lot. And so for those of us who were into food, I just watched anything that was on television, because you didn't have the Cooking Channel, the Food Network, Discovery, Vice, this, that, the other. You didn't have all the options at all. So if you were thirsty for food personalities and, having food come out of a cookbook, because I love my cookbooks too, then you watched all of these things. And all these people were people that you enjoyed.
And they were
learning from.
at their skill set was through the roof.
Exactly.
They were not just on TV because they were personalities or because they could point a camera at themselves.
They were teachers.
Like me. Well, this is like one of the reasons why I'm the kind of teacher that I am, is because look who I learned from. I mean, not just on TV. I worked with these people. I worked with Martin Yan. I worked with Mr. Food. I worked with Julia Child, because I was working for their publisher doing the cookbooks. Because what happened was that after my friend Harriet brought me to the office and said, I'm going to do a cookbook with this guy, it got around the office that I knew my way around a cookbook. So the editors started calling me and saying, do you think you could come in here and help me go through the stack of photographs and match the photographs up with the recipes and then write the caption? Because the guy who wrote the cookbook forgot to do that. So, I learned how to do it, but like the Frugal Gourmet, he's gone. I can't get sued. What a piece of work. That he knew that he was a 5,000 pound gorilla because he made so much every money. I made money. So he didn't have to lift a finger. So he would literally do stuff like, let's say the contract said the book was due on Tuesday. On Thursday, off a shoebox full on pieces of paper. And I mean cocktail napkins from bars, the back of your utility bill, you know, Kleenex, toilet paper. I mean, and it was just like, you know, whole wheat bread, 2 cups flour, 2 cups whole wheat, 1.5 teaspoons salt, mix up dough, put in pan, bake, cool, slice. So I would sit there with Maria, who was his editor, and you couldn't get mad at him, right? She couldn't say, "What the heck do you think?" Because if he said, then fine, then I just won't do it because I have so much money. I don't care whether I turn in the book or not. Go fly a kite, or words to that effect. Then it would throw her budget off for the entire year. Because when you're an editor and a publisher, you sit there and you say, how many books am I going to do this year? And how much money am I going to make on each book? And then you turn that into your big boss. And the boss says, okay, you're going to be you have to bring in $3.5 million worth of royalties this year. And then so if your star author throws a hissy fit and doesn't turn in the book, you're out that amount of money, and your boss gets mad at you and fires you. That F word no one wants to hear. So I remember it was a Labor Day weekend, and we just sat up, and this was with a typewriter, not computers. And we sat there and typed up the recipes. And, we had to sit there and make a list of what all the recipes were, and then what order they were going to go in. And so we would do a chapter, and then she'd go, okay, pasta. Okay, you do the pasta with meatballs, and you do the this and this, da. You were right to get rid of the books. They weren't that special. And you missed the part, I think, where we were talking about, somebody was just saying how they wish that they had hung on to the Frugal Gourmet's books, but they got rid of them during the scandal. But this is what I was talking to Nadine with earlier in the program, and if you watch it, you'll see it, which is that I have to stay totally on top of what is happening in the food world and what to teach and what to write about. And one of the things that's kind of sad is that the food world is changing so much that books that were perennials are no longer that timely. And so like somebody just asked me to make a list of what 5 cookbooks I would recommend for somebody in 2021. I picked 3 books that were old, and actually, unfortunately, the people that wrote them, 2 of them were friends of mine, and they both have passed away. 2 of them have passed away. And then 2 of them that are brand new, because there's different ingredients than 25 years ago. I remember 25 years ago, if you wanted to make tiramisu, there was no such thing as mascarpone in America. And we would mash up cream cheese and put heavy cream in it, and and do and little yogurt, and we would make fake mascarpone in order to make tiramisu. Now we can go to the supermarket and get mascarpone like that. So some of the recipes are good, but things change so much. A lot of those cookbooks are obsolete. And I've been lucky with a lot of my cookbooks because I'm cooking, again, we were talking about this earlier, about traditional foods. And so they're part of your nostalgia Okay, if they're part of your nostalgia world, then like if you want to learn how to make fried chicken, you buy a Natalie Dupree book because how to make fried chicken has not changed that much. I will say though, that 25 years ago, nobody was soaking their fried chicken in buttermilk brine. So you see what I mean? Is that
Exactly.
things change.
So someone said, what are some cookbooks you'd recommend now?
So let me tell you the books that I recommended for the baking. One was called A Good Bake by a woman in Manhattan named Michelle Weller. And she's famous for her babka. And also, so it's just is a really good book because the recipes are some easy ones and some hard ones. But the recipes are very well written with a lot of step-by-step photographs. And it's a good book to have. Another one that's brand new is a book from a friend of mine in San Francisco. Her name is Michelle Polzine, Polzine. It's called Baking at the 20th Century Cafe. And I'm very proud because she got my book Coffee House for Christmas one year. Excuse me, it really influenced her because she was celiac. So I couldn't eat gluten. So when she saw that I had so many recipes that had ground poppy seeds or ground nuts in them as their base, it really influenced her. So she took the book and went to Vienna and Budapest and went to all of the cafes in the book and marked things off. And then came back and started baking these specialties. And now it's opened up a restaurant. Then there's 3 books that are very much on the old side, but if you want to learn how to bake, these books are indispensable. And one of them is called The Simple Art of Perfect Pastry. And that is by a woman in San Francisco named Flo Braker, Braker. And when I started working in test kitchens in Manhattan, in the different test kitchens of the food magazines, it's also something I did for a while where I really learned a lot. Her recipes, she taught me how to write a hard recipe. You know, like, let's say how to write a recipe for croissants. You know, you measure it, and you write it down. You don't just say make a large rectangle. You say roll it out into a rectangle 17 inches long, 12 inches wide, and about 1/4 of an inch thick. That way you are always going to get the same result that I get. And then there's another book that really changed the way how people bake because it was the first time that you had recipes for those really, really crunchy, crispy Italian breads. That book was called The Italian Baker. It's by a woman named Carol Field. And then the last book is very old. I put it in it was published in like 1958. And I put it in there because it was the book that I learned how to bake from when I was a kid in college and, wanted to have people over for dinner. If I made something out of that book, it was always amazing and people just flipped. And, no one bakes in a vacuum. You're baking so you want your friends to say. It's terrific. So those are the 5 baking books that I have. I think it's hard for me to say what my general baking books are because cooking books are because.
You like Donna Hay?
What's that?
Do you like Donna Hay?
Yeah. The name of the last book was called The Art of Fine Pastry. And the name of the woman who wrote it was a woman named Paula Peck. who had one of the first cooking schools in Manhattan. Yeah, I do, but I have a hard time sometimes with her recipes because of the Australian ingredients and measurements.
Yeah.
I
like the Australian, I
Huh?
like the Australian, their magazines, and I like her.
Yes.
I like that I think that they're a little bit more worldly than we are.
Well, the photography is amazing in those
Yeah,
magazines.
yeah.
Well,
I like her cookbooks because they're kind of small, and for people who haven't been cooking, it's very approachable, and her pictures are really easy, you know, like, so I think it's very like 21st century.
yes, but you get into the kind of thing where we're talking about real cooking and not real cooking. And sometimes I find the photography to be so beautiful. I'm like going, there's no way in the world my food is going to look like that. It's so styled that there's no reality. You know, there was a trend, excuse me, about 20 years ago when Ruth Reichel came into gourmet. And I remember this very well, where she was like, I don't want to make these stupid photographs. No one cooks like this. The food is tortured into beauty. I want it to be natural. And so they started doing photographs, you know, where people, you know, they would make a coffee cake, like what you would serve in the morning. And there would be lipstick on the orange juice glass, and there would be a cigarette stubbed out in an ashtray. And it didn't last very long. People said, we want our beautiful photographs back.
I have
Because
to
you're living
say,
a
as
lifestyle.
as a Libra, I like when I take pictures and then there's a little bit, like I didn't like wipe off a little bit of smudge or something like that, or there's a little bit of drip of the soft. I don't like that. I'm one of those people who I don't know if I want it highly stylized, but I also don't like those necessarily natural shots myself. But
So let me tell you some like of the dirty secrets about the problems that happen, you know, when you write a cookbook. And a lot of times, a lot of really bad things happen in the photographer's studio, where the food stylist does not respect your work, my work as an author. And so they will they're about how the picture looks. So they'll put herbs on top of things that don't need herbs, or they'll put the wrong herb. Like because they have a bouquet of oregano, they'll put oregano on top of something that has rosemary. And I remember one time I did a cookbook where they sent me the photographs, and there were 10 different recipes where they had changed the recipe without contacting me, without asking me. And it was stuff like, well, instead of making blueberry pie, we made raspberry pie. Not what it was, and remember, hand pies. And instead of making blueberry hand pies, so hand pies would be round, you'd fold them in half, and they'd be like a calzone. We decided we wanted to make raspberry Pop-Tarts. So they made them rectangular. So I said, well, did anybody measure how big the rectangles were and how much dough you needed? Because I'm seeing that you probably needed more dough. Oh yeah, the food stylist just made more dough and it turned out fine. I go, how many Pop-Tarts did you out of a double recipe, and how much raspberries did you use in order to make the filling? Oh, I don't know. The food stylist just kind of eyeballed it and it threw it together and it turned out great. Like, but my name is on the cookbook and my readers have to know how many pounds of raspberries to buy. I had 10 recipes like that. So that's the way it went. And so that's the kind of stuff that you have to deal with when you're a cookbook author. Now, of course, there are people that have TV shows where everybody is, you know, that they can get away with whatever they say goes. But if you're a middle of the road cookbook author like me, I don't have any power. I'm really just a member of a team where there's a lot of people that are involved. And my opinion is sometimes important and sometimes not that important. But you know what? I cash the check every time. So, you know, so, but when you're doing a celebrity cookbook, sometimes people, I realized a while ago, I left that subject in the dust way behind me, is that sometimes I'll have somebody like Patti LaBelle. When I worked with Patti LaBelle, she was like, I want to write a cookbook and I know exactly what recipes I want to use because my dad owned a restaurant in Philadelphia and my aunties are all wonderful cooks. Okay, so here's the table of contents. Here's the recipes. You test them and you let me know if I forgot to leave something, if I left something out or whatever. Recipes were great. The book sold 200,000 copies. And I just did a cookbook with Patti about 2 years ago based on her dessert business at Walmart called LaBelle Desserts. That's a really good book too. And then, however, when I worked with Frankie Avalon, he was a lot more free form. He was a lot, well, we really had to sit down with a bottle of Chianti and some spaghetti and really talk about what was going to be in the book. Well, I mean, that's my job. And to listen to them, to what they have to say about what they want to cook. And he had some mom recipes that he wanted to do too. But that book was we had to be a little bit more creative. We had to make a lot of phone calls to relatives to get their recipe for that cookie. And it turned out to be a great book. I really enjoyed that book. And if anybody is Italian American, is looking for a good Italian American cookbook, that's the one. Has really good lasagna, meatballs. There's a really good crab in red sauce and spaghetti. There's some really good stuff in there.
That's what a lot of people.
I don't know about, I should let you answer that, Nadine. I'm sorry. I should.
Oh, no. I was just trying to see, I was going to say about the crab and tomato sauce. It's like, that's like a nice dish for the Feast of Seven Fishes. And then someone is suggesting John Bon Jovi. He has a restaurant and as a good celebrity cookbook.
Oh, a suggestion for one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you're suggesting John Bon Jovi's cookbook. I've never seen it.
I don't think he has one. I think this person's saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just heard in the publishing magazine, which is Publishers Weekly. It's actually a website called Publishers Lunch, where they talk about news in the food in the publishing world. that Bill Murray and his brother, and now they own restaurants in Florida,
Okay.
Caddyshack restaurants. Thank you for that idea about, I really do know somebody who could get in touch with Bon Jovi and ask him if he wants to do a cookbook. So, people are mixing Bon Jovi and me up all the time. So, I did think that maybe he won't want to do it, because I can't tell you how often I'm at Whole Foods and somebody says, look, there's Bon Jovi. And, they're pointing at me and, but anyway, so he might want to do it, because of that. But we'll give him a call and we'll see if maybe. I have a buddy who used to be the personal chef for Bruce Springsteen. His name is Chris Styler. That was a good job because everybody in that gang was very nice people. But
how did they eat?
What do you think? So you can still fit into 30-inch blue jeans. That's how they ate.
Oh, okay.
If your waist is your business, then like you look at it and go, am I going to be able to fit in those blue jeans in a week if I eat this at the end? So I'm trying to think, and then I did a bunch of books for Teresa Giudice.
Oh.
Or Giudice, as she pronounces it now.
Yeah.
So somebody told her that she was mispronouncing her own name. What a world. And
did you meet Joe? Did he contribute to the cookbook too?
Yeah.
Does he own a pizza parlor?
Maybe that's who they were really mixing me up with. Maybe they were saying that's Joe, and I thought they were saying it's Bon Jovi. I'm so glad we worked that out. Oh yeah, I met the whole gang, and her mother is a real sweetheart, and she's from Tuscany.
Oh.
So that was the kind of book, again, where her mother really had her act together and was like, I want to make this and I want to make that and I want to make this and I want to make. And so we had some really good recipes from Mama.
That tasted good.
And recently I did a book with Super Tuscan, that show on the Cooking Channel.
Uh-huh.
And that book was a real pleasure with Gabriele and Debbie. Gabriele Corcos and Debbie Mazar. Because, again, that was the kind of book, it was so much fun, go over to their apartment in Brooklyn, open up a bottle of wine, and just sit there and be like, I don't know, what do you feel like we should cook? And every day it was like that. Every night we would talk about what we're going to cook the next day. So it would be, okay, tomorrow we're going to make roast chicken with autumn vegetables, and we're going to make eggplant, Parmesan of some kind, whatever. And so then we would sit there and write what ingredients we would need, and then we would go to the supermarket the next day in the morning, get the groceries, and come back and cook. So sometimes I do the entire book and then send it over to the celebrity and say, now you have to have your family make this stuff. And they do. Because, listen, they hire me because they don't know how to do it. It was like, these people normally have like 6 weeks off. Let's say they have a TV show. And so then they say, well, I really want to write a cookbook, but I only have 6 weeks. And I'm like, I can write a cookbook in 6 weeks. There are other people that can't write a cookbook in 6 weeks, but I know how to do it. Okay, if we have 6 weeks, that means if it's 100 recipes, I have to do 15 recipes a week. There's 5 working days. That's 3 recipes a day. If I can't do 3 recipes a day, I shouldn't be in the cookbook business. Now you're a real cook, Nadine, so you know what I'm saying, right? Is that like, especially if I have backup with the celebrity and their family and or the people that are around them feeding me stuff, like if we're sitting around talking and they're going, oh, remember how grandma used to make that bread that she put the provolone in it? And I'm like going, yeah, I know how to make that. You know? Or so it's hard work, but it gets done.
So your card that you got before was lavender, and it's devotion. So do you think that you got that card because you've been devoted to your cooking career?
Yes, I also have been with my husband for 41 years.
That is devotion.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, you know, we met in kindergarten. It was quite controversial when I brought him to, you know, the baseball games, the softball games. But yeah, it was. We've been through a lot. When you think about what has happened in America and gay culture in the over 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
Patrick and I have really seen a lot and been through a lot together. You know, because all of our roommates died, all of our college roommates, all of our roommates when we first moved to New York, they all died from AIDS, that plague, that other plague. So, you know, we've gone through 2 plagues together. You know, most people only get to have 1 plague, you know, but wow, we had 2. So I also am very much a family person. I came from a family where everybody stayed married and everybody, you know, it was the feeling was they came from a society when something was broke, you fixed it, you didn't throw it away. And I think that that is really the way how I look at a lot of the things that have happened to me in my life. But the other thing that I liked about being in the cookbook business is that I was always the guy who was the hero. I was always coming in on a white horse to save the day. You know, like, again, the way how like celebrity cookbooks or restaurant cookbooks or bakery cookbooks, how they happen is unusual because sometimes it doesn't always start with the celebrity's mind. You know, like them saying, I need to do a cookbook. It's their agent who, or somebody in their team says, you should do a cookbook because it's a great marketing tool and you have all those recipes from your family and you're such a good cook. So they sniff around and they get a literary agent and they would go, but I don't know how to write a book. How am I going to write a book during my hiatus? Hurry, we got this guy in New Jersey. He knows exactly what to do. He's going to help you out. So that was something I really liked about my job because I had, in a way I'm talking in the past tense because when I moved to Delaware, I told everybody that I was going to retire. And you know what? A lot of people believed me. And so with COVID, everything in everybody's business has changed. And so in my business, I'm just not that concerned, that I've retired and I have myself set up with an income that like you're supposed to, you know. And so if I work, I work. If I don't, I don't. But it really takes, I might get out of bed for Bon Jovi, but I don't know anymore how much I'm going to. I'm certainly not pursuing any work. It happens eventually, Nadine. I promise you. Hang in there. Eventually, we do get to retire.
I mean, I like what I do. It'd be nice just to not like have to think about money. That's what I'd like, So.
Well, we all have responsibilities to other people too. Then there's that.
Yeah, I have a 12-year-old that has expensive tastes, so she enjoys lobster and shrimp and understands wild salmon and the difference between hard salami and sopressata, so
yeah, you're creating a monster.
I know, like people are like, well, I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? Eat the sopressata and tell her she can't have it?
No, it's I would say that was one of the main things that I didn't like. I don't want to sit here and like what I didn't like about living in Delaware, but one of the things for sure was that I didn't have access to degrees that I'm used to. Jersey and the supermarkets were not that.
I've never spent any time in Delaware. I've only just taken the train or driven through, so I don't even think I've even eaten there. No, you know what? I did Wilmington. I did eat in Wilmington once, and it was really nice actually.
Did you eat on the water?
Yeah, we ate on the water and then we walked along the water, and that was really nice.
Yeah, so it's lovely, but for me as I don't like to use the word chef because I think that's very specific. That's my thing. That's also an old school thing, is that you can't be a chef unless you're trained as a chef. And if you work at a restaurant where you have the responsibility of running a restaurant, then you get to be a chef. But hey, listen, I went to cooking school in Paris. So, I have a lot of old-fashioned ideas. So
what cooking school did you go to in Paris?
In La Varenne.
Okay.
The thing that was great about La Varenne was that they taught in English and in French.
Okay.
So
I took a course at the Ritz Escoffier. They only did it in French. Yeah. And luckily it's I took French. And when you're cooking, it's actually a great way to be able to understand something because you know what they're doing, so that you can associate the words with the actions. But at that point, at my stay in France, I was pretty good at understanding things. It is 8:22, and so I just want to ask the guest that is on here if they want to ask any closing questions. And I want to say, Rick, that I did finish a deck of cards. Rose, I finished a deck of cards.
Which deck is this?
It's my Oshun card. So I finally finished changing the colors and changing the type. So I'm very happy about that. So
is this for your online class?
This is for my artwork. This is like my art. Oh, you probably can't see because of the glare, but this is for my art stuff. I make these
all
decks
I really
of
see
cards.
is a white light.
Yeah, I make these decks of cards for I have these installations, and then they become like kind of talking points when people come into my installations, because it's kind of awkward when you come into an installation and you see kind of a random person. And so it becomes a way in which we can talk or commune with each other around the art. And so this deck of cards is called Channeling Oshun, Self-Love as Transformation. And it was a exhibit and installation that I've done twice. And it's about the goddess Oshun, who is the Yoruba or Nigerian goddess of love and abundance and fertility and other things. I don't know if Rick left us or turned off his camera. Um, so, oh, you're back. Yeah. Rose, do you know if it is my class rescheduled? Is it in May? The Blue Zones class?
I believe that's in April. Let me double check that for you.
Well, next week on Co-Create, we have Martha Lewis, who is a curator and artist in New Haven, based in New Haven, but she also lives in France part-time and travels a lot and does a lot of really interesting projects. I want to thank Rick for being on our show and being so candid and open and talking so much about his illustrious career. And it's great that you're semi-retired or you have the choice to do whatever you want. You know, may people learn from that and learn from all the different ways in where you were open to opportunities that came at really interesting moments, that they weren't like something that you wrote a resume and sent it in. You're at the right place at the right time and prepared and a good teacher and a good student. Are there any questions that anyone wants to ask? We do have 5 more minutes.
And Nadine, since you asked about your program, it has been rescheduled for this Monday, the Meatless Monday program at 7 o'clock to 8:15.
Right. So my rescheduled final as part of 3 classes in our plant-based series, and it's cooking from the blue zones, which are places in the world where groups of people have lived to over 100. And so we'll be looking at foods from Okinawa, from Sardinia, from Costa Rica, and some other places, Loma Linda, California, where the Seventh-day Adventists are one of the groups that are covered in the blue zones. Well, Rick, I have a couple questions. Where do you see, or one last question, because I think that it will be only one last question that we could do. Where do you see the food industry going, and your thoughts in regard to like COVID, especially like food writing? You are on mute, Rick.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
It got turned back off when we lost our connection. I tighten up when I start to talk about large gatherings, about large parties. And all my career I was a teacher about how do you, and for the person who I know who said that they have Thanksgiving one, they know this about me, is that I'm the person that you would turn to for how to really get Thanksgiving dinner on the table. When you have the turkey and 8 side dishes, and how do you get them all out on the table at the same time? So like this last Thanksgiving, I was teaching small gatherings, like how do you do a turkey breast? How do you do a boneless turkey breast wrapped in pancetta and roasted with wine sauce, as opposed to how do you do a 30-pound turkey? So I just think as we move forward, we have to keep that in mind. And I think that there's more, like I want to teach people about how to cook for two, how to cook for four, how to cook for your pod. So that's my feeling. I'm moving ahead. Otherwise, I do think that there's no turning back with plant-based foods. I just feel that our plant-based lifestyle. I mean, I really think that the good thing about that is not just because of the sustainability, but that for most people, it's something that they really have to learn how to do. And that's where a teacher like you comes in, Nadine. You know, I think it's great. It's just that I know for myself, if I were to say I'm going to change over to a plant-based diet, I would have a lot of learning to do. So those are two short answers. They're the only two short answers you're going to get from me all night.
Okay. And then I guess we'll have to do another segment about the, food writing and the future of food writing.
I mean, I can tell you that really quickly. I just feel that people feel like they, I think that the main thing that people want right now is another thing is that they want a connection through their food on their plate. They want to hear the story behind the food on the plate. They want to hear food memoirs are really big, and your personal story behind your food is really important. Like if you're doing an ethnic cuisine, you have to be of that culture now. Now, when I was writing a lot of books, people would come to me, not so much, I worked on a lot of Asian cookbooks, not because it's my culture, but because I knew how to help them organize the book so that the average consumer would be able to follow the recipes. But now that I see cookbooks, every cuisine in the world. I just saw a book about the cooking of Senegal. Now that's niche, but it's about the person is from Senegal and understands all of the nuances. And so for people that love cookbooks, you can't see that, and you'll go, wait a second, I don't have any Senegalese cookbooks. I want to learn about this. Most cookbook lovers think that way, which is why most cookbook lovers have hundreds of cookbooks.
So we'll end on that. And
Okay.
thank you so much, Rick, for being on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
Oop, got a very
Thank you
long
for
comment.
asking me, Nadine.
All right.
Yes.
It says, thank you for doing this live. I'm glad I saw this pop up on my Facebook feed and will go back to watch the beginning. I love to see something from Rick on meal planning when you're cooking for 2, 3, 4 and only shopping once a week. This past year has been a challenge. I have a big chest freezer and a pantry, so I try to throw things together from what I have and don't go shopping for specific ingredients. But it's been more of a challenge since I had a TBI in summer of 2019 and was really just getting back to cooking. House cleaning still isn't back to what it was between my challenges and having people at home more often.
I'm a big believer in making like a tomato sauce, and then using that, if I don't freeze it, using, knowing there are ways of using it, or making a roast chicken, buying a bigger chicken than I normally would, and then roasting that, and then having the leftovers for chicken salad, chicken tacos, chicken enchiladas, and stuff like that. So I would say think big and then work your way down into thinking small.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Have a
Goodbye,
great week.
everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Rose.
Thanks, Rose. Thanks, Nadine. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.